Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, tipplers of the tech world. Welcome to your weekly swig of tech talking tonic. It's time for another dose of the sweet elixir of tech talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in today's episode, we've got 2 or 3 updates from the robot files. They're the saviour of the online shopping industry in the UK. They've been flopping and flailing on stage in Taipei, and they may be landing in the classrooms of New York City if they can get past the PTA. Robots are everywhere, folks. We've got a couple of stories of what is happening in the world of drone technology these days. We'll take a look at how they may be forming a part of the defence against active shooters in schools across the US. And we'll look at Google Street View and the unintentional gift that it has given to many people the world over. All that and more, but not before I bring the guy with all the knowing and the doing to the microphone. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Thank you very much, James Eddy. A pleasure to be here. Now, I have this minor ambition, not a major ambition, but a minor ambition in my lifetime that I want to introduce a new word to the vocabulary. I just think that'd be nice. On the headstone, invented the word X, whatever it might be.
As seen in the Oxford Dictionary.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much. And I often throw together words as a portmanteau. Throw in word 1, word 2, put them together, and you've got a new meaning.
Smushed together.
Yeah, that's right. So brunch, which I didn't come up with, but brunch is one of those classic portmanteaus. Is it breakfast? Is it lunch? It's halfway between. Let's call it brunch. Great. Love it.
Fantastic.
I wish I would have come up with it. So today I was in a taxi, and I was sitting there in the taxi, and in front of us was one of those big Mercedes-Benz vans, and on the back of it, it was called a Sprinter, which didn't seem appropriate for a big van, but that's what they call these vans.
Apparently they sprint.
Apparently they sprint, although I don't see a big van sprinting, but I'm not going to talk about Mercedes-Benz naming processes. And it's funny because I was having the conversation with the taxi driver at the time that we seem to have almost skipped winter. We're almost into spring. And I was looking at this word sprinter on the back of this van, and I'm thinking about this spring, winter, and I've gone, hello. It's not a new word because we've got a new word. We've got that word sprinter already exists. But if we put spring and winter together, we've got sprinter. So I'm claiming right here, right now, that I want to say the word sprinter should be used for this little tot of time we've got right now, which is too warm for winter, although we're technically in winter in Australia, but we're not quite in spring, but it's almost warm enough to be spring now. So we need a new season called sprinter.
And you need to put a trademark on
That's right. TM, right there, done.
Anyone who wants to use it?
Now, I have done a bit of research on this just to make sure that I'm not just making it all up. Today, if people are listening to this when it's launched, is the 17th of August. So when I went back and looked through the records from 1910 to 2023, because that's the reliable data we've got there from temperature, the average temperature has risen over those 113 years by about 1.51 degrees. I'm going to say that's climate change. Other people might say it's just seasons, whatever. But the facts are there. So we know the temperature's risen. So that's about, if we look at that, and then go a little separate conversation, in the area that we live in, the average temperature from August to September goes up. The mean temperature goes up by 3.2 degrees from August to September. So if I combine the average temperature rise over those 113 years and the temperature rise from August to September, I get the fact that now the temperature on the 17th of August, on average, is about the same as it used to be in 1910 on the 1st of September. So today is a perfect example of spring has arrived a few days early. So, a couple of weeks early.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So 14.6 days, if you want to be accurate. So let's call it 15 days. We've got spring a bit early. So people who feel like we've got spring a bit early, or people who feel like it hasn't been that cold in winter, are probably right. So their kind of general feeling is backed up by the science and the evidence. The other thing that I noticed is that the magpies that love to attack me when I'm out riding my bike seem to be coming just that little bit. They're not looking at the calendar. They're a bit rude, and they're actually taking note of the weather around them. And that's obviously a big issue with, I assume, bird life, plant life, a whole range of things.
The winter is just part of the seasonal cycles that we have in this area. And, animals and plants time themselves based on the weather. And so, otherwise, I guess flowers, they require a cold time. It's called vernalisation. It's the length of the cold period that'll send them off to flower. So if we're having a short spring, we might not get the lovely
winter.
flowers.
Short
Winter. Sorry.
Yeah.
If we've got a short winter, then we might not get the lovely flowers out for spring that we usually do. Anyway, sorry.
So things are changing.
We'll digress.
With all of that, that's perfect information, because with all of that information, you start to say, well, what else is changing? Because things are changing. There's no doubt about it at all. So I want to hear that term, which is out there. People go, gee, we're in sprinter at the moment. We're just in between winter and spring. We're in sprinter. So
you can use that, folks. That's for free.
That's right. You can do it for free. Now, the thing I really want to talk about, though, was electricity prices. So I had a very interesting conversation with a very good friend of mine, and he made a wild statement that said electricity prices have gone up 5-fold. So that's kind of 600% in the way I would calculate it, because 100% is kind of double. So 600% in the last 10 years as a result of renewables.
Oh, yawn. So we're going down this road again. Everyone's heard this one before, yeah.
So the first thing I said, of course, was that's rubbish, but I don't want to just say it's rubbish off the top of my head. Let's research it. And I've done a bit of research around it, and I've come up with some interesting information that I think might put a few things into context, because a lot of people are saying we're paying so much for electricity now, we're paying more than I ever paid before, and it's all the fault of those damn renewables. So I've used as the basis of my research ABS data, Australian Bureau of Statistics data. So I assume that's fairly reliable. I assume most people can accept that. There might be some who say it's all a government conspiracy.
It all depends on how deep you've gone down the rabbit hole. But anyway.
Right. So I'm taking that as a fairly reliable source. Now, the first thing that frustrates me no end is when people say prices have gone up. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, this is inflation. So over the last 10 years, we've had average inflation in Australia at 35.6%. So yes, price on average have gone up, and I don't really understand inflation. I know my kids said to me one day, what about, Dad, if everyone just stopped putting prices up and there was no inflation? I went, I don't know enough about economics to see if that would work or not, but it makes sense. But anyway, it doesn't, okay? At the moment, we've got inflation, so prices will go up. So yes, electricity prices have gone up, but so has everything else on average by 35.6% in the last 10 years. So then I looked at the last few decades. I just took a decade at a time and looked specifically at electricity prices relative to, or real terms. So forget about how much they went up in absolute terms. What you really care about is how much something's gone up in real terms, above inflation.
Relative to inflation.
Relative to inflation, yeah, because that's what really matters. You know, something I've heard people say, I've got this great investment property. I bought it 50 years ago and doubled my money on it. I said, well, no, you didn't. You lost a bunch of money because you didn't count for inflation. So when I looked at that, I looked at some of the big winners and losers, if you like. So over the past decade, tobacco went up by 121.8% in real terms. I would say most of that is government taxes. So stop smoking, everyone. We'll put the prices up. But you talk about cost of living pressures. You got insurance went up. That was number 2, 27.6%. Gas, 18.3%. Petrol, 18.2%. So all these things went up. That's above inflation.
Above inflation, right.
Electricity was 15th on our list of things that have gone up in real terms, 9.9%. So, yes, it has gone up, but by 9.9%. But then the real killer, let's go back a decade further, 2006 to 2016, electricity prices were number 2. They went up by 64.0%.
Oh, wow, they launched.
They absolutely launched. So tobacco was still number 1 at that stage. Go back another decade, 1996 to 2006, electricity went up by 1.7%, hardly moved. Previous decade, electricity actually fell by 11.1%. So people's feeling that electricity has gone up recently, last 10 years not so much, but the 10 years before that, absolutely, that's why you're feeling it. But renewables, the cause of that, that's what I wanted to dig into next. So I looked at 1986 to 2016. That's the time frame we're really talking about, not the last 10 years. Renewables accounted for about 11% on average over that time frame, which I was surprised at. So hydroelectric schemes, Snowy Mountain Scheme and Tasmania have made up about 11% over that time frame. Wind just towards the end of that 3-decade period, and solar not at all. I mean, maybe a few solar panels in there, but in the whole scheme of things, basically irrelevant. So up to 2016, wind a little tiny bit, hydro was always there at 11%, and the rest was made up typically with coal and some gas. Gas was a big mover in that as well. But they don't account for basically any of that It's the network. So the transmission. So you're not paying so much for electricity to be generated, but for electricity to be transported. In 2015, 48% of your average electricity bill was network costs. 24%.
So what, maintenance and whatnot.
Building the network, maintaining the network.
Yeah. And as towns have grown, as cities have grown, they've had to put in the infrastructure for it.
Well, a whole range of things. That, but also some of this infrastructure was built a long time ago. So you've got to maintain
upgrading,
it.
Yep.
Termites might attack timber power poles, so you've got to maintain that. Bushfires, we have them in Australia. So there's all these other things that happen, floods, there's natural disasters, there's I say wear and tear. There's not much wear and tear on electricity, but there's wear and tear on the equipment holding it up. But so 48% was network, 24% was the cost for retailers, 22% was the wholesale price of electricity. So not much. Now, that was 2015. If we jump forward to 2025, and I'm pretty excited by this because September 2025 was a breakthrough moment. September 2025 was the month that renewable energy actually generated more electricity in Australia than coal.
Yeah, I think we reported on that too, yeah.
So that was pretty exciting. So when you look at the electricity prices now, so 2015, even forward to now 2016, 39% is still the network cost, 47% is wholesale generation and 7% is retail. So of our electricity bill at the moment, even if somehow magically we could click our fingers and we could halve the cost of generating electricity, it would only reduce our bill by 23.5%. The network is really the big, it's not the major contributor anymore, but it's still a big chunk of that. And how do you reduce the cost of electricity now, or the cost of the network? And so I started thinking more about that. Was it a lot of privatisation? Because some privatisation happened in the period.
Yeah, that was a big step then.
It
we
was.
were looking at about 20 years ago that sort of started to kick in.
Yeah, I think across the nation in different states it started at different periods of time. So I think you're right, 20 years to maybe even as recently, say, 10 or 12 years ago. So over that sort of decade. But apparently it wasn't really the privatisation that caused a lot of that network infrastructure upgrade. Some governments were doing it, maybe getting the networks ready to sell off. Maybe that was part of it, but also making sure that it was fit for purpose. And, of course, you've got coal-fired power stations. A lot of those were built in the 50s and 60s. So if you're getting to the point where you want to replace those, which a lot of them are being closed in now, a lot of cost in maintenance, there's a big cost. So if you look at...
So the ones that are still open are being kept alive because we're paying extra money to keep them alive.
To a certain extent, yeah. There's probably some ones that were built in the 80s and 90s as well, but they've still got 30 or 40 years on them.
Yeah.
But if you look at it today, and said, we need to generate more electricity, how are we going to do that? Building a coal-fired power station or building more renewables, it's been proven by everyone that's researched it properly, and I haven't got the data to show you with that part of it, that renewables are a cheaper way to go forward. Now, coal was cheap after those assets had been paid off. After they were 30 years old, 40 years old, they were cheap because all the cost for the infrastructure was done. They only had to keep the cost going to maintain them, but wait, they're getting more expensive to maintain. They're getting older now, and there's that little minor issue of pollution as well from those. So bottom line is, no, you can't point it at renewables. You can't say renewables are causing these increases in electricity. When the prices did go up, it was the network costs. But without a doubt, renewables going forward, if we looked at this or in another 10 years, when we're doing this podcast in 10 years' time, we'll look at it and say, gee, that next decade, electricity, my prediction is it will go down in real terms, largely on the back of renewables contributing. Because the big thing for me is if I'm running coal-fired power or gas-fired power, I have to keep feeding it something. I've got to keep digging up coal and keep feeding it coal. When I build my wind turbine, there's a cost to build it. And then I sit back with my feet up on a chair and go, come in, wind, keep doing your thing. Yes, I've got to maintain. I've got to make sure there's some oil in the gearbox or whatever. Same with solar panels. I've got to make sure they're all connected and everything's working okay. But really...
But overall, the net cost...
Surely, if I've got the sun and the wind doing the hard work for me, not feeding in coal or gas, which someone's got to mine and someone's got to get to that particular facility, surely that makes more sense. And I've said this many times and people laugh at me, but you keep digging up coal, you keep digging a hole in the ground, you get to the bottom eventually. Sure, it might be a big hole. Sure, it might be decades, but there is a bottom.
There's a bottom.
You can't
it's
go
finite resource.
That's right, it's finite. Whereas wind and solar, sure, soul is a finite resource, but we've got a few billion years left.
But
on
I
our sun.
feel that we'll still be having this conversation and defending in 10 years' time.
Maybe.
Just
So I've got
hold
that
on
off
to
my
your
chest
hats,
now. I feel much better about it.
folks. Okay, we better
funny-
get this show on the road.
The funny,
No.
sorry, this is the last thing. The funny part was the response from my friend when I gave him some of this data was he quickly backtracked when he said, well, I said 5 times in 10 years, but it's really 3 times in 20 years. And I went, well, you just
That's a big
picking-
difference.
That's right. You're picking out numbers now. You show a few facts, you shine a few facts on whatever the discussion people put forward, and the story changes very quickly.
Yeah. All right, let's get our regular stories on the road here. The competition for wearables to develop and perform new party tricks is through the roof. Up to now, smartwatches and smart rings have been comfortably tracking physical changes like your heart rate, your temperature and movement as merely par for the course. But that sort of stuff barely raises an eyebrow these days. The latest generation of smart wearables, however, is diving into measuring body chemistry, reading the hidden messages written in your sweat. So, Matt, if sweat is the cologne of accomplishment, so they say, then maybe this ring is going to measure just how successful you really are.
Well, it does sound nice, doesn't it, to have that idea of you've got to sweat to make your smart ring work. But these clever people at the University of California have come up with a little concept where you just need to have enough while you're sitting there. There's a little bit of moisture in your skin all the time.
Yeah.
That moisture is enough to be able to pick up some information on our biochemistry.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? So
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. When I started reading this story and doing the research, I went, yeah, but that's great when you're
Sure,
out
it's a
going for a
furphy.
run. Yeah, that's right. But enough moisture in your skin. So I find it quite fascinating. So the smart rings that are available now commercially do some basic things like the very first smartwatches. Heart rate, your movement, maybe your skin temperature, but that's about it. So they're pretty basic. But this, and it's a prototype at this stage, many of the things we talk about are prototypes. It'll have 4 biomarkers at once they can monitor. So, for example, glucose, ketones, vitamin C, uric acid, lactate, alcohol, 4 of those at any one time. And I
Wow.
assume that will keep growing. But just you start to
You've got a
think about-
chemistry lab on your finger.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? So it uses, obviously, it uses that little bit of moisture in your skin, just that little bit of moisture coming out. And I haven't found it fascinating. Just alcohol. Imagine saying to your kids, "Here you go. You're going out. You're too young to drink yet. Just put this smart ring on. It's really cool." You come back. I've detected you've had a beer tonight, son. What have you been doing out there? So just all those little things. So that little tiny bit of moisture is enough. There's a soft osmotic hydrogel that gently draws that sweat into the ring. And then obviously there's some electrochemical sensors that analyse that and feed that information to your smartphone.
But surely this thing's got to be flushed and cleaned on some sort of regular basis as well.
Well, apparently
Well-
not. You've got to do some personal calibration. So you do
Yeah, okay.
some calibration against you as an individual. And about every 2 months, you've got to do that again. That's at this stage. But they did some fascinating tests. I watched some of these where they actually did things like, for example, let's look at glucose and let's look at your glucose levels. And they then looked at some commercial continuous glucose monitors and matched that against the information coming from the ring, and it was within plus or minus 10%. So
There you go.
it wasn't bad from just a little bit
And
of
again,
information.
these things aren't going to be, completely diagnostic, but they will give you a bit of an inkling that there might be something wrong.
And I thought, one of the things I thought was fascinating was they'll do things like check hydration levels. So that's great. Normally, you should be drinking enough water. But I just ran an event about a week ago and my son beat me by 8 seconds. And I was a bit shattered by that. And I stopped at
Not
the
that
drink
you're holding
stops.
onto it or anything.
That's
but,
right. So there was a 14-kilometre run and there were drink stops about every 2 or 3 kilometres. And I stopped along the way at each drink stop to have a quick drink of water as I kept going. And I thought, I just needed to stop one less time. I reckon I could have stolen 8 seconds
Yeah.
there. If I had a ring telling me my hydration was okay, skip the next drink stop, then that might have been the 8 seconds I needed. So where was this ring a week ago? So what I actually find absolutely fascinating in this is not only have you got a sweat collection sensor in the ring, not only have you got electronics, wireless communications to transmit that, but a battery inside the ring. And the battery lasts about 12 hours. So not brilliant,
Right.
but it'll do you for the day. It'll do you for an event, a run,
Yeah,
or whatever
okay.
it might be. But just think about that. A little ring on your finger, and it's probably a big ring, but a ring on your finger has got enough battery power to continually transmit that, to analyse it,
Yep.
and then transmit that to your phone nearby. You just go, wow.
I don't want to take anything away. Sounds really fantastic. But I just keep thinking about my watch band gets full of skank after a while.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah. Well, I think if you've never heard that word before, you're probably guessing what it is.
Like
and
belly
so I'm
button
just
fluff.
wondering, this is surely got to be cleaned. If that's what it's doing, is measuring how much stuff's coming out of your skin, then surely it's going to get clogged at some stage.
So maybe as they keep doing their testing, which is where they are at the moment.
I'm sure that they've done heaps of testing and they've taken the skank factor.
Maybe they have a de-skank process. Once a week you need to de-skank this ring. But that's what they'll discover. As they keep doing the testing, they might discover you need to be de-skanking. They'll come up with a more attractive word for it.
It'll be part of the instructions.
Yeah, that's right. So the other thing I like about this is just understanding how people's bodies respond to things like a meal or fasting or exercise or medication, all these things. Different bodies react to different things that you put into those bodies, and then having the information immediately, I just think that's fascinating. So we are getting much better, aren't we? At just monitoring
we
what's
are,
happening
and
in our
I just
bodies.
can imagine you're going to get one of these, and you're just going to be on your phone all the time, just checking it, and you have
I'm going to eat some chocolate.
bite,
See what that does.
have a bite of the cupcake, and then watch. This is changing.
If they're not changed enough, I'll get another cupcake. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Though I think we'll see more and more of this used in a whole range of ways. Probably we'll see them in competition. We'll see them in some sort of competitive environment, but then everyone will be wearing this sort of stuff just to see what happens with their body.
For sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
By mid-July this year, the US marked 31 school shooting events in 2026 alone. Now, to the rest of the world, these tragedies are so rare that it's bizarre that there's even a term for it. Yet in America, now only the worst ones make the news. While the root of the problem may seem clear to outsiders, one thing that is obvious to all is that this phenomenon is now a tragic part of the culture. And so, security companies lean heavily into technological solutions to market to schools and hopefully save some innocent young lives. And Matt, the latest is in pepper spray drones.
I hate the problem that we have. I love this as a solution. Now, you're right, we don't hear about them that often, do we? Because there are so many of them. I think the American public and maybe the world is becoming numb to them. Last year, 2025, 233 firearm incidents in schools last year. Now, I would estimate roughly there's probably 200 school days in a year. So that would mean more than one a day across the entire United States. That seems incredible to me. Now, we don't have this problem in Australia. Very rarely we have this problem in Australia.
I don't think it occurs anywhere else in the world, does it? But anyway,
Not to the same level, that's right. And we might argue about gun laws, but I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to have a political discussion, but we certainly don't see this problem, so we're probably not as front of mind. But for people in America, parents obviously in America in particular, then yes, it is front of mind. Now, it seems obvious. You love it when you see research being done and you get an answer that you go, well, that was obvious, but it's good to have that research to back it up. How quickly authorities respond reduces the number of fatalities. That
makes sense.
Fairly obvious, because if someone's left alone for 30 minutes, they're probably going to do more damage than left alone for 5 minutes. So getting people to respond, and most fatalities occur in those first few minutes, again, which seems pretty obvious. So there's a Texas startup that's developed the Guardian Angel system. So what they've got is drones that are ceiling mounted in armoured containers, and they can launch within about 15 seconds of an attack. So a teacher has a process, an emergency button, something that they do to trigger that, yes, there's an incident happening. 15 seconds later maximum, these drones have popped out of their armoured canisters in every classroom, every hallway, and off they go. Now, the first thing I thought was, well, how do they know it's
who the bad guy is?
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's one of the other issues.
There's a teacher running down saying, kids, quick, get under the desks, whatever, and next thing they get hit with this drone with pepper spray.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, interestingly enough, they first of all wanted to equip them with tasers and pellet guns. And the authorities said, no, that's a bit too drastic.
Yeah.
Even though we're trying to neutralise someone there, can we do it in a better way? So pepper spray, which seems like a really good way to me. It doesn't do long-lasting damage, but I've never had pepper spray, but I've talked to people that have had pepper spray, and they've said it just is completely debilitating. You cannot do anything once you've been sprayed with pepper spray. The stinging in the eye is so bad. So that seems like a really good method to me. So how do you know the bad guys, or the bad guy typically won? So what happens is when these drones launch, even though they say they're autonomous, there are people sitting back in head office that take control of the drones. So
okay.
once that goes, once the drones pop out of their canisters and off they go looking for the bad guys, there are people who are sitting back in head office going, right, I've got control of the drones, let's go looking for where they might be. The nice part about it is they'll go down halls, they'll go looking in rooms, they'll go in trying to find the perpetrator and obviously not risk someone's life, not a teacher saying, I think he's in classroom 7, I'll have a look. Oh, no, there's a bad ending there, or police going in and looking for them. So I like the solution. I like the fact that you've got drones that are being used in such a clever, effective way. And if I'm going to go and do this in a school, maybe I'm not thinking completely straight, but if I know that they've got drones in that school, maybe I'm not going to go and attack that particular school.
So
because
perhaps,
I know they've got
just the knowledge that they're there would be enough of a deterrent.
So to give you an idea of how worried parents are, parents in one school raised $285,000 to fund installations of these drones in their school. Tell me parents aren't worried about this. So it's being trialled currently in 8 schools. I think it would be effective. I almost feel like I don't want it to be tested in a real-world environment because that means that obviously there's another shooter out there, but it's going to happen. Without a doubt it's going to happen, but maybe someone will look at it and go, and often it is a student in that school, they might go, we've been told about these drones. Well, the first thing I've got to do is get rid of those drones. How do I do that? Well, they're in an armoured canister. You can't kind of shoot it out first. How do I disable that system? It might all be too much trouble, which is probably what you're trying to do. You're probably just trying to make it all too hard. And then is that kid likely to go to another school? Maybe not. Maybe they've got some issue with a teacher or another student at that school. So, maybe it is an effective way to do it. So it's interesting. Should resources be put towards rapid response or should resources be put towards stopping it in the first place? Well, whatever stops it, I suppose, is the secret here. So I do love my drones. I do love the different ways we're using drones. This might be a really effective way to save lives.
Consumerism in Britain is booming with a magnitude of online shopping placing enormous pressures on warehouses. Speed and efficiency are the key, but the demand is so great that mere mortal human workers could not possibly keep it up. So, in 2026, the logical solution is to bring in the robots and start hitting some delivery deadlines. Matt, the conversations in the smoko room at Tesco and Asda are about to become all buzzers, clicks and whirs. But at least the parcels will go out on time.
They will go out on time. They will get there. And there's huge demand across the world for online shopping. And the 3 companies that are really big in the UK that are using this now, you mentioned 2, Tesco, Asda and Next. And I think Tesco and Asda are basically supermarket, homewares type stores. Yeah. And Next, I hadn't heard of them, I had to look it up, but they're kind of like more a fashion warehouse. The issue is, which we're seeing across the world, is labour shortages. I think some of the labour shortages are down to people taking sick days, way too many sick days, but that's maybe a personal issue I've got there. But we know just recently we've had some staff shortages in air traffic control at Sydney Airport, which has delayed flights. So there are staff shortages happening all over the place, and there are some jobs, well, you kind of can't go ahead without air traffic controllers. That's a bit of an issue. In things like warehouses, you can keep working, but you're just not going to get those parcels out on time. So that's been an issue. But Geek Plus is a Chinese robotics company who have offered a great solution for warehouses. We've now got, at the moment, over 2,000 Geek Plus robots operating in 10, that's right, in 10 UK warehouse sites. This is the largest European market across obviously all of Europe for this particular company, but they're finding that they're actually getting the parcels out on time with the expectations from customers, from shoppers out there, because they've been able to use robots. Now, obviously, any of this, you've got unions who want to get a bit involved in this, saying you're not replacing humans. And they've gotten to the point now where the unions have accepted the fact that, well, you're actually not replacing humans. The humans aren't turning up.
We don't have enough.
Have them, So what they're doing at the moment is they're using the robots to pick up products from shelves, bring them back to a central point where humans are still packing them. Okay. What they're finding is they're using QR codes and floor markers and basically using them to pick out the right product, if you like. What they're finding, though, is that they're able to have better storage density. The robots are smaller than humans can get down those various things. Yep. They're able to get them to the packing staff quicker. And the thing that I thought absolutely fewer picking mistakes. So they're able to get them back there, and it's the right product. So when it gets put in the actual box, the right product gets shipped out.
They stuff it up less than the humans do.
That's right. They stuff it up much less because they're just basically on QR codes.
Yeah, QR codes are solving the problem there.
I've got that particular product away I go. So it all makes sense. What they're trying to do, the unions are trying to say, we want them to help, we want them to have those humans packing, but
not to take over.
Correct. But how long will those humans still be packing it together until it gets to the stage where robots pack those particular parcels together? How long before humans are removed from the equation altogether? Humans need lunch breaks. They go home at night. They do have sick days. They have holidays. Robots tend to not do that. They don't even have smoke breaks. They just keep working, and it's probably easier.
So there's no conversation at all in the smoko rooms from the robots?
No, not even beeps and bops. I think it's just, there's no smoko. You just keep working, boys. Just get to it. Yeah. So it's quite fascinating. The other thing I think is the big picture issue here is that we've talked about China before, who have made some strategic decisions more than 2 decades ago, to say, we think the world will need electric vehicles and robotics. Let's focus on that. So they've encouraged a lot of Chinese companies to do that. And a lot of Chinese companies are doing both those. So, for example, XPeng, I think you pronounce it, XPENG, developing electric vehicles. They're going quite well in that. But they're also developing robotics. Humanoid robotics is part of the equation for them, and that's where there's a lot of work being done as well. But when you think about it, an EV and a robot need motors to operate, they need batteries to operate, sensors, cameras, they need electronics. So there is a lot of shared technology between those two classes of products. So it probably makes sense that you'll get your BYD car and your BYD robot. Maybe there'll be a special 2-for-1 deal.
Come as a package
That's
deal.
That's right, who knows. But I love the warehouse robots, but you know that I'm still keen for the humanoid robot. I know we're still keen.
We're all
the next
looking for
story
it.
might put me off it a little bit, but this story says we're getting there, and certainly there are a lot of robots coming out, a lot of different types of robots, a lot of industrial robots, but we really want the home robots is the next big issue there.
Well, as they say, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. And as anyone with a bit of stage experience will attest, you have to make every stage appearance your best, or before too long you'll lose your crowd. These are 2 valuable lessons that should have been heeded by Qualcomm, which is a company, when they launched their humanoid robot recently in Taipei. Let's say that things didn't go completely to plan. Matt's got the details, but the good news is that no one was injured this time, and some important lessons have been learned, Matt?
Well, that's what the company's saying, but that might be the spin department putting that spin on it. So Qualcomm were at Computex 2026 in Taipei. So a great consumer electronics show showing off latest products. And so they were showing off the new Dragon Wing IQ10 robotics platform. Fantastic. Out comes a humanoid robot. Yes, we all want those.
We love the humanoid robot.
This robot delivered a particular component to a person on stage during a presentation. And then it took a step back and kind of froze a little bit and then completely collapsed on stage. And then it's hilarious. Go and watch it on YouTube or whatever you want to watch it on. And you see one hand kind of come up as if to say, oh, I'm okay. And that hand drops back down.
That might have been quite distressing for some people.
It might have been.
Someone saved the robot.
But then someone did. A couple of people came off stage, threw a little black blanket over the robot and carried it off as if someone has just died on stage. Now, the presenter almost ignored all this and kept going on strong with his presentation. The problem is, for Qualcomm, this has been watched absolutely millions of times. By the time we've recorded this, it's probably tens of millions of times by the time you go and watch it. But the share price for Qualcomm fell 10.13% on the back of this failed robot. Now, it may be the spin department.
With the hand going, help me, somebody help me.
What Qualcomm said was they explained it by saying there was a brief communication glitch which triggered a fault in the prototype during the live demonstration, and once that fault was detected by the robot, it initiated a controlled, safe collapse sequence to stop any danger for people nearby. That's what they say.
Yeah, right. Well, I've seen footage of some of these humanoid robots just going berserk.
Correct.
Losing control.
So
I'm kind of glad for that.
Well, that's what Qualcomm's saying, that the safety systems are designed to perform exactly as intended, because what you don't want is a robot having some glitch and then going cray-cray and
on the loose.
with more power than people around them, then that might be bad. So
we're going to need more drones with something more than pepper spray.
that's right, to take out the robots. I'm not sure if they're affected by pepper spray, but something. So we want our machines to fail safely. So if this is right, then this should have put the share price up, because look at those robots.
Yeah.
If they do fail, they fail safely. But that's not how the rest of the world read that particular
It
failure.
failed. That's
And
all
I
we
just
saw.
wonder, how many times do you reckon they did this demonstration in practice? Because you're doing a live demonstration, you
Yeah.
want to make sure it's
Rehearsed.
spot on. Oh,
Yeah.
rehearse,
Never work
rehearse,
with
rehearse.
what are children, animals, and now robots.
That's
Yeah.
right. And this is part of the issue, I think. Maybe they practice that on stage 100 times. Who knows? But suddenly there's a crowd in. There's maybe different lights. A live demonstration is a live demonstration. Things are different. And this
Robot
is
got
what
stage fright.
Maybe it just went, oh, what are those people doing up there? They're all looking at me. And it collapsed. So maybe we've got some
Happens
time to
to the
go
best of us.
before we've got robotics in the home making my omelette. But we'll get there.
Certainly it's a while before we get them back on stage again.
Probably
Maybe
too.
not.
Well,
Yeah.
well, but maybe there will be a bit of a reluctance for companies in the future to go and do a live. Let's do a live demo. Don't you remember Qualcomm?
Yeah, you surely got a video demonstration. Well, despite minor glitches on the stage every now and then, the robotic revolution continues onwards and upwards, and humanoid robots are now accessible for a broader section of the community. Now, in New York, one senior high school has been looking into bringing in a bit of a spark to show and tell by introducing their own humanoid robot into the mix. It's an expensive project, enlisting a robot onto the staff roster, but it certainly stirred up the school community and drew some heated debate. Matt, what was all the hubbub?
Well, I thought it was a great idea. So this is a school district in upstate New York, and they laid out $86,000 Aussie dollars to buy a humanoid AI robot called Sally. Okay, that's fine. Lovely name.
Fair enough.
All fine. They've got senior high school students who are studying robotics. They're studying artificial intelligence. They're studying STEM, and a new term that I've heard, I'm sure you've heard, STEAM subject. So
Oh, yeah, STEAM has got arts in it.
in it.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So I thought it would have been more STEM that they were studying with this. But anyway, STEAM have added arts into the mix there. And so they didn't want it to replace teachers. They wanted to show what you could do with robotics, get the kids involved in it. And so that all seemed fine to me. And maybe it would act as a bit of a teacher's aid, help the teacher in the classroom. But just a minor problem. I'm sure they went out and did a very honest process where they had tenders, they looked for the best product, and they laid out a lot of money for this robot. But then some parents who, I'm sure you're familiar with this, like to get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on in the classroom, they found that the robot that was chosen by a manufacturer called Realbotics, Realbotix. And that was fine. They make fine robots. But it also happens to be that this same company has got another product in their lineup, or another sister company in their lineup, that happens to make hyper-realistic AI-powered sex robots. So some parents weren't that happy about that.
We're worried that this thing was going to come in and just be a little bit too sexy.
Maybe just teaching them too much. Maybe
Right.
things that
Okay.
they didn't need to be teaching them. And maybe some of the students would have gotten very good friends with the robot. Now,
Right.
the teachers and the Realbotics company said, this is not the same robot that we sell to
it's a
people.
different robot,
That's
surely.
right.
We're not giving you the one that,
So,
that's on those posters.
That's right. So apparently they were worried that this might be a tutor that might tutor them in too much. And excuse the terminology, but they might expose students to things they didn't want to be exposed to. So at the moment, Sally's been shelved. Sally's suspended. Before Sally got to work, Sally's been suspended while they continue discussions with Realbotics and discussions with the teachers and more consultation with the parents and all the rest of it till finally they can bring the robot back. I'm sure it's
Just
all
to
very
make sure
innocent.
this robot's not going to proposition any of your students.
That's right. Not going to say, I'll come around to your place at 5 o'clock today. So, I mean, there is real concern about AI in classrooms, real concern about robotics, but I think what this school was doing was quite admirable, saying there's concerns out there. Well, let's bring in a robot and see what those concerns are and how we deal with those concerns. So fantastic. I thought that was very admirable. But unfortunately, some parents got in the mix, and you know better than I do what happens when too many parents get into the mix and start sticking their nose in. So I'm interested to see what happens next, whether or not they'll sell Sally off to some other school or someone else and they'll get a different robot in from a different brand. But anyway, there's obviously people out there using robots for a whole range of things.
A very worldly robot. So the development of contact lens technology way back in the 60s gave a new freedom to people who felt that their style had been limited by their eyeglasses. Since then, contact lens technology has grown further, and soft silicon lenses are now widely used and relatively cheap. But if yours is a very specific prescription, the option to use contact lenses has been narrowed down to hard lenses with lengthy weights in the production. That is until now. With 3D printing, anything custom-made can be done in a snap of the fingers, and soft silicon lenses are no longer an exception, Matt.
Isn't that fascinating? 3D printing contact lenses.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought.
So they're specific to the prescription, the very specific prescription of the individual. This is amazing.
More than that, so I didn't realise this, but some people have irregular shaped corneas.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I have one of those. I haven't been tested, but apparently...
That could have been the problem you've had all along, Matt.
That's right. That might have solved everything. So apparently some people can go in and say, I'd like some contact lenses, and they look at their eye and they look at their cornea and say, sure, here's one from our standard range, and we just have this prescription and pop it in and away you go. Other people have to have a hard lens made, and that's apparently a process that involves a few visits to the optometrist, custom manufacturing of that particular one to suit your cornea.
Yeah.
And then
I assume fitting for it as well.
Yep. So cost. So apparently you're talking up to maybe $2,500.
Oh, wow.
For a custom contact lens if you've got an odd-shaped cornea. Who knew? Mum and Dad, thanks very much for odd-shaped cornea. It just cost me a lot more money. But now we're at the point where the University of Waterloo has developed this digital manufacturing platform where it can 3D print a custom lens customised to your cornea and obviously your prescription as well. That's in 20 minutes. So you go in and see the optometrist. They obviously do something to measure your eye to see what it looks like and do the cornea. Obviously the normal testing in terms of your vision. And then, look, go and have a cup of coffee, come back in and we'll pop your lenses in. Done.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, they're only small, so you can't imagine it would take very long. But then the precision's got to be so hyper-fine.
And most of the 3D printing that I've seen has been with something that's hard. So it uses printing that prints out something that's physically solid, but to have it as a soft lens that you're happy to put in on your eye, which you probably don't want to scratch your eye. So having that I thought was fascinating. So they actually had to develop a whole new hydrophilic silicon formulation so that you can 3D print it and still have it soft enough and all the properties you need. So a few new developments happen with this, and the inside of it obviously has got to be soft enough so it doesn't scratch your eye, and then the outside of it has got to be the lens correction that you need. So absolutely fascinating. I thought that was great in terms of being able to give something to people cheaper, faster, benefits all round. 3D printing.
It's the answer again. Once again, 3D printing has come to the rescue.
Can't we just 3D print a robot then? Can't I get my robot 3D printed?
Come on, hurry up. Okay, so we're diving back into the news from the dronosphere now. With drone deliveries becoming more and more normalised in some locations around the world, it was probably only a matter of time before the stories of drones falling out of the sky became a thing. Matt, someone in the UK won themselves a surprise parcel in their backyard recently attached to a drone. Are residents now going to need to go and start wearing stack hats out in their gardens or what?
Maybe. Look, this is interesting today because I've got a couple of stories where technology hasn't gone quite so well, and I'm very positive about new technology, but I still have to tell the full story, the real picture. And so
some of them are a bit quirky, like this one.
A robot collapsing, and this one here, an Amazon Prime air drone crashed into a residential garden in Darlington, England. It was a routine package delivery, but what happened apparently was there was an object standing above the roof of a moving vehicle which must have just clipped the drone, and I'm sure the sensors on the drone probably just didn't pick up that fine. It might have been a large
Yeah.
antenna, for example. And I've told
and
the story
moving,
before
yeah.
about the very first drone I got. The kids gave it to me for a present. Here, Dad, you love this concept of technology. It was a very early drone. And so the first thing I did was I took it out, went out to a friend's farm, and I wanted to use follow me. I wanted to test it out. So I got my car and got it to focus on my car and sent it up. And I started driving along, and it lasted about 2 or 3 minutes before it clipped a tree and crashed into the ground and was broken. So I
And
came
you
home.
destroyed that present that your kids gave you.
I
You
came
said,
home and
kids,
said-
this is stuff. Don't ever buy me this
That's
ever
right.
again.
Look what you gave me, a broken drone. And when I looked at the video afterwards, what had happened was the drone had been set up to follow the car. That's fine. But the drone had auto obstacle detection, but just a couple of leaves on this tree that went nearby were too small for it to see with its detection, but not small enough to not get in the road of the rotors on the drone, caught the rotors and then came crashing to the ground. So I imagine that's what happened similar here, that an object above the roof, like a large antenna, clipped that. The Air Accident Investigation Branch over in the UK is now launching, or has already launched, an investigation into the crash, because you've got these flying objects. They had to get approval, Amazon had to get approval from the UK Civil Aviation Authority to even run these trials. So they've been running this trial throughout the year. They'll go to the end of the year. So this is the only place outside some states in the US where Amazon is operating its prime air drone. So you want this testing to happen. You want this testing to happen on a small scale. They work out what goes wrong, and then when it starts launching larger scale, fantastic. So this particular trial they're doing at the moment, limited to parcels weighing less than 2.2 kilos.
Oh, that's pretty small.
It is pretty small. So you've probably got beauty products, bin liners, electronic
Engagement
cables,
rings.
engagement rings, nothing expensive. And they're limited to 12-kilometre radius from Amazon's fulfillment centre that is based there, obviously, in Darlington. So you've got some limitations on there, but Amazon still sees autonomous drone deliveries as the future, getting past all those truck rolls, getting past traffic, getting past all the fuel that's used, or they're using electric vehicles now, but all of that, getting drone deliveries, doing all this. I still don't know if we're ready for the noise, but I think in terms of getting the deliveries out there efficiently, absolutely. So they'll learn from this. There'll be an investigation into it. They'll learn and they'll get better at it, because these drones are flying beyond the operator's visual line of sight. They're using onboard sensors, cameras, autonomous navigation systems, so a whole range of fascinating things. So I love the
amazing
concept.
tech,
It
isn't it?
is absolutely amazing tech. And yes, I'm sure with all new tech, there's going to be some problems from time to time.
Yeah.
Here's a problem. They worked it out. Luckily, no one got injured. And even if 2.2 kilos fell, it's probably not going to be that aerodynamic, and did land on your head. It probably would hurt a bit, but it's probably not going to be falling at the speed of a bullet coming down. It's probably going to be floating more down, because it's going to be something that's not that aerodynamic as it falls. So I don't want to be under it as
Let's
such.
just hope it has got sharp points and stuff on it.
Yeah,
really hard
maybe
points.
that'd be bad. Maybe that's what they've got to do, is they have that pass at the bottom of it. Maybe it's not going to be that pointy. I'm not
Maybe
sure.
they put the bubble wrap on the outside.
Maybe they've got little parachutes like those little toys used to get. Used to fire up in fireworks. They float down in parachutes. So
Yeah, we've solved all the problems right
that's
here
right.
now.
Done. Thanks, Amazon Prime.
Google Maps have taken on an unintentional but very sweet role as an archive of sweet memories for some lucky internet surfers. Google Street View is a database of millions upon millions of photographs. People just going about their day, of places with unique and special meaning for people, preserved forever and ever. It's become something of a digital time capsule with a little gift for everyone on the planet, Matt.
I was reading this lovely story about a London woman who discovered her late grandparents preserved on Google Street View. Now, of course, as the Google Street View cars drive around taking all these photographs, they're blurring out images automatically of number plates, of faces. But this woman looked and said, I know that's my granddad and my grandmum. And it was a lovely photo. I had a look at it, and there's a lovely photo of granddad opening the door, holding the door open for grandma, just as they're walking in. And so this particular person said, I know where my grandparents lived. That's their. I can see the clothes they're wearing. I know that's grandma and grandpa. They both passed away, but I can just see that, and it's a lovely little snapshot capturing a moment in time. And so she posted a photo of this and just posted a bit of a story about missing her grandparents, and the granddad died that year in 2011, so it's from 15 years ago. And then lots of other people posted as well, saying about different memories they've got, different images they've seen.
Yeah.
Might be a pet that was randomly captured on a Google Street View camera, might be a parent. But what I've used it for, this historical view, I think is really interesting. I used it, I was doing a bit of a research project on a car park where I wanted to see if we needed to extend a certain car park. And I wanted to actually see how much the usage had changed over the years. So if you go and grab Google Earth, you can go back and look at every image that's taken of a certain point. Now, this was using...
I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was using satellite images rather than Google Street View, but the same concept applies.
Yeah, right.
So I looked at these photos, and I actually went all the way back to about 2013. And it wasn't perfectly accurate. I wasn't doing it for a PhD research level sort of project. It was just a matter of interest to see how much this is being used. And all I did was I took every Google Earth photo from 2013 through, and usually it was about every 8 months, sometimes 12 months, sometimes a year and a half, but it gave me enough information over those 13 years to see how much more the car park was being used now compared to how much it was used back in 2013.
Yeah, right.
And it was just a rough count of, like, there were 50 cars using it that year and 100 cars at that time. So you could see this progression as that car park had become fuller and fuller over time. Now, obviously, there are potential inaccuracies there at different times of day, all the rest of it. So, again, it wasn't research level sort of research, or not high level university level research, but it was quite interesting. So all you need is Google Earth. You typically need to install it on your computer rather than just use the web version of it. But you've got Google Earth. You can go back and look at all these different images and go back over time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And so you can look at Street View. You can look at your house, maybe how much your house has changed.
The house has changed, or maybe you've moved out of a house and you had an affection for a house that you once lived in and the garden that was there. And
how's that changed now? And if it's in your same place that you live now, it's fine, go for a drive, but it might be somewhere hundreds, thousands of kilometres away. You might wonder what that place looks like. Oh, look at that, they've done that with it. So, it's quite a nice thing. But I just imagine going forward, I hope Google, they'll take a fair bit of data centre activity or space to record this, but I hope they keep all those images going forward years, decades, hundreds of decades. Imagine just going forward 30 years and then being able to look back and say, look at that, look at how much that street's changed.
But it's everyone in the world everywhere has got that
it?
capacity to check up on that.
And isn't that a fascinating idea that someone sat in the boardroom one day and said, you know what we should do? We should publish photos, satellite images to start with, and then Google Street View. And someone said, you're crazy. Why would we do that? The expense of doing that, where's their return on investment from that? But they're getting it, I assume. But it's just fascinating.
Yeah, everyone's been on Google Maps and Street View. Ever since April of 1914, Australia has stood up time and time again, stepping into the global boxing ring and punched well above its weight division. Now that the internet has blown open the boundaries of international communications, the Australian government has been stepping up to ensure that the standards are kept for Australian citizens, somewhere above a B-grade Wild West movie. Digital platforms stand on notice for the access that they allow for teens and younger, and countries the world over have followed our lead. But now our federal government is looking to enforce some integrity in journalism with a little tweaking of the rules on how news is delivered by big social media companies, Matt.
And how much they will pay to whom. So back in 2021, we led the world again with the News Media Bargaining Code, the NMBC, not a great acronym, you know my issue about acronyms. So that was in 2021.
Right.
That was the first legislation globally to require major technology platforms to negotiate payments with news publishers. So similar discussions then happened on the back of that in Canada, California, and even some parts of Europe. So fantastic, well done. The biggest flaw with that technology or that code was that it was a code. It wasn't compulsory. They said you should go and negotiate. You should make some payments. And so some of the big social media platforms, the Facebooks, the Googles of the world, they actually did go out and negotiate with some outlets, and then they decided that was enough, or they didn't want to pay them anymore because there was no compulsion to do it. Things just changed and sort of floated away a little bit. And I remember there were some companies that I was talking to who said, we're getting payments from Google now, we can keep going, we can keep delivering news, that's fantastic. And then they said, we're not getting the payments anymore. Wow. So the new changes in the News Media Bargaining Code are basically saying that if you don't negotiate with some news media outlets, then we're going to charge you a 2.5% levy on all your Australian digital advertising revenue. So in other words, pay us, the government, some money, or just negotiate with some of the news outlets and you'll pay probably less to them than you will to us. So basically, we don't want you to pay the money to the government. We want you to pay the money to the news outlets. So that's now going to make it compulsory to do that or be charged a levy. So that will probably bring them back to the table. And this is the numbers from the government, if they are penalised, they think the penalties will be in the order of $400 million. If they negotiate some commercial agreements, they think it's probably going to generate about $250 million to the news outlets. So that probably seems like better for those companies. So let's go and do it. What they've changed, there's been a few changes in the discussion they've had going forward. They want them to sign agreements with at least 6 Australian media organisations. In the past, it was only 4. Right. So they've got to sit down and negotiate with 6 outlets. So that seems reasonable. And the other big change has been it will only be a levy on the Australian digital advertising revenue rather than all Australian revenue. Right. So that's been a source of a bit of debate. And I actually think when everyone's a bit unhappy, you've probably got the legislation right. And in this case, there's been some concern about, or the publishers have said, hold on, this weakens the incentives because you're only looking at it around the advertising revenue. And technology companies have said, hold on, the scope of the legislation is too far. You've gone too far with this. Which services ultimately are covered? So they're both a bit unhappy. The news outlets and the technology companies are both a bit unhappy. So that seems like it's probably about the right mix. So it's probably been something that started great, didn't quite work because it wasn't compulsory. Now there's been the next step going forward. I hope they do sit down and negotiate with some of these news media outlets. Yeah. I want the news media outlets to still be out there with journalists getting the news. I don't really want the news to be fed by people who have an opinion. I'd rather news to be fed by people. And
that's all that they've got? Yeah.
That's
so,
right.
we need to bring back journalism as a career.
Well, I think there's a couple of parts of that, isn't there? One is we want some journalistic integrity, but we also want, say, sub-editors looking at the information those journalists are providing.
That's right.
To say, well, have you done the fact
to ensure there's some quality,
Yeah, that's right. And we want those media outlets to actually have enough revenue that's being generated so that they can say we can employ journalists going forward.
It feels like that so much of the news we get is just now a headline that has been generated by anybody.
Anybody, yes, that's right. So, look, I hope it works. I hope the rest of the world follows. And I think there's enough money in what the technology companies are generating to share it around a little bit. I reckon there's probably enough in there that they can actually say we've got enough to give some of it, $250 million of it, to some of these media outlets and then get journalists actually doing the job of journalists.
Interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it will be. We'll report more on it as we go forward.
And that, ladies and gents, is that for another show. Pack it, rack it, and stack it. Let the warehouse robots deal with it another day in the future. For now, we are done. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
Happy with that and happy with the robotic stories. I am also interested to see some of the feedback that we might get about electricity prices. Most of our listeners are pretty smart. They understand it. They get it. I'm sure there's a few out there that still think we talk bunkum, so I'll be interested to hear some of that feedback.
And we'll be getting that feedback for another 10 years. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson is a hand-read podcast raised with tender love and care from a wee kitten of a conversation to become the big, bold and brassy podcast that it is today. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you well until next time we meet and return with another shiny new episode for you to enjoy. It's your head start to a better and brighter future. Until then, take care and we'll see you next week.